Chapter 1. A man's world shattered. The front door clicked shut behind me, muffling the low hum of cicadas outside. I dropped my keys into the ceramic dish on the entry table like I did every evening. A long day of back-to-back job site visits had left my shoulders aching and my boots coated in a thin crust of dust. All I wanted was a shower, a cold beer, and maybe a quiet dinner with my family. Instead, I felt something off. It hit me the moment I stepped inside. No scent of dinner wafting from the kitchen. No teenage music thumping from upstairs. Just silence. My brows knit together as I walked through the hall. Then I saw them. My living room was full. Linda sat on the far end of the couch, legs crossed, arms folded. She wore that light, gray sweater she only pulled out when she wanted to look effortlessly perfect. Her lips were pursed, and her eyes, usually soft, at least at one time, were hard and unreadable. Next to her sat Steve. Steve, my best friend since high school. He was relaxed. Too relaxed. One arm stretched behind the couch, close to Linda. His smirk was subtle, but it was there. That cocky, smug confidence I hadn't seen on his face in years. Now it looked carved into him. My daughters, Haley and Jordan, sat on the opposite end. Haley, 18, stared at the floor. Jordan, 16, met my eyes for only a second before quickly glancing away. And in the single-seater, by the lamp, sat my mother. Her expression was the worst of them all, neutral, reserved. Like she'd already picked a side. My chest tightened. "What's going on?" I asked, scanning the room. "Is someone sick?" Linda didn't move. Didn't blink. My eyes moved to my mother. She wouldn't meet them. Then, finally, Jordan spoke. "Dad," she said, her tone firm, rehearsed. "Sit down." I blinked. What?" Haley finally looked up. Her eyes were glassy. "Please, Dad, just sit." I hesitated. Everything in me screamed, don't. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. But I sat, lowering myself onto the recliner like a man walking willingly into a trap. The silence returned. It stretched long enough to make my skin crawl. "Someone want to explain what the hell's going on?" I asked, glancing around. "Why are you all sitting here like it's an intervention?" Steve chuckled. "Just once." That sound, casual, amused, made something in me snap. "Steve, you got something to say?" I snapped, eyes locking on him. He shrugged. "Not yet." I turned to Linda. "Linda." She finally looked at me, and what I saw in her eyes wasn't anger, it was detachment. Like I was a coworker being let go. "You need to hear them out, Jake," she said. "Hear what out?" Jordan took a deep breath. "We've been talking. All of us." My eyes flicked from face to face. "You what?" "Behind my back. It's not about sides, Dad," Haley added, her voice cracking slightly. "It's about truth." My stomach dropped. "Truth," I said slowly, trying to keep the tremble out of my voice. "Truth about what?" Linda leaned forward, elbows on her knees, hands clasped. "We don't feel like this house is balanced anymore," she said, her voice calm and calculated. "We don't feel heard, respected, loved." I stared at her. "You've had the run of this house for too long, Jake," she continued. "Work, work, work. You're always gone. When you're home, you're tired or irritable or barking about something not being clean. I bust my ass to keep this house running," I said. My voice rose. "You think the mortgage pays itself? You think groceries magically appear?" "No one's denying you work hard," Steve said, casually stretching his legs out. "But that doesn't make you a father. Or a husband." That did it. I stood up fast. "Don't you talk to me about being a husband," I growled. "You sit your ass on my couch in my house, next to my wife, and she's not just yours anymore," Steve said calmly, not flinching. My heart skipped. "What the hell did you just say?" Linda stood now too, facing me directly. "Jake," she said, voice lower. "Please, just listen." "To what?" There was a long pause. Then Jordan spoke again. "You need to accept a new reality." I looked at her, stunned. Haley nodded, her face blank. "You're not in charge of the family anymore," Jordan said. Her words struck like a hammer. Cold, clear, delivered with the finality of a judge. Steve shifted in his seat, one hand resting near Linda's lower back. Jordan finished. "Uncle Steve is more like a father to us now." Silence. My jaw clenched so hard I felt my molars ache. A cold fire spread from my chest outward. I looked at Linda. She didn't deny it, didn't flinch, didn't cry. My mother still hadn't said a word. They all knew. They'd all talked. Sat together in this room. Planned this ambush. My best friend. My wife. My daughters. My own damn mother. My world didn't shatter. It imploded. Quietly. Completely. I didn't scream. Didn't punch anything. I just turned and walked out the door. Chapter 2. Before the fall. 6 months earlier, everything still looked normal, on the surface at least. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen blinds, throwing golden stripes across the countertop where Linda stood stirring her coffee. She wore a robe and had her hair in a messy bun. The same messy bun I used to think was cute as hell. Now it just looked indifferent, like she hadn't really tried, like she didn't care to. "Don't forget, Haley has that volunteer orientation at the library today," she said without looking at me. I grunted from the table, already buried in my tablet, scanning through contractor schedules and job site delays. "Ma'am, got it. I'll try to get home in time to drop her off." "Try." I looked up. Linda's tone was sharp, too sharp for 7:30 in the morning. I said, "I'll try." I replied carefully. "I've got that plumbing inspection at 11 and a walkthrough at 3. I'm doing what I can." "Right," she muttered. "Always doing what you can." I put down the tablet. "What's that supposed to mean?" She shrugged and took a long sip of her coffee, eyes still fixed on the window like I wasn't even there. It was like that more and more lately. Conversations didn't feel like conversations. They felt like transactions. Exchanges of information between two people who used to be in love, now barely roommates. But I didn't push it. I learned not to. Every time I tried to ask what was wrong, it turned into me being the problem, me working too much, me being distant, me always being tired. So I gave up trying to fix what she wouldn't admit was broken. I left for work that day with the same routine peck on the cheek. Her lips didn't even purse to meet mine. My crew and I spent most of the day pouring concrete for a driveway extension in a new development on the south side of town. As always, I stayed late to make sure the sub was doing it right. Details mattered in this business. It was what set me apart. It was how I fed my family. But even out there, covered in dust, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling in my gut. It wasn't one thing. It was everything. The night before, I come into our bedroom and found Linda hastily flipping her phone face down on the bed. I hadn't said anything, just changed and crawled under the sheets, pretending not to notice how she turned away from me. A few weeks ago, she changed her phone's lock screen from a picture of us to a generic flower wallpaper. She said she wanted less clutter. Then there was the time I walked into the room and heard her end a call abruptly, like a kid caught red-handed. "Just my sister," she said with that fake casual tone. Her sister, who usually couldn't shut up on speakerphone, was suddenly whispering? Bullshit. But I told myself I was overthinking it. That was work stress. That maybe I had changed and didn't notice. That Saturday, I came home early. The job site wrapped up quicker than expected, and I figured I'd surprise the girls by grabbing pizza and having a real family night. As I stepped inside, I heard laughter. Not the giggles of my daughters, no. This was a low, smooth male laugh. I turned the corner, and there he was. Steve, sitting at my kitchen table, sleeves rolled up, one hand wrapped around a beer, the other holding a deck of cards. Haley and Jordan sat across from him, eyes bright, faces lit up like Christmas. Linda stood at the counter, pouring him another drink. "Hey, look who decided to show up." Steve grinned when he saw me. "What's going on?" I asked, keeping my voice light, but already feeling the itch under my skin. "Game night," Haley said. "Uncle Steve brought cards." "Just trying to keep your girls entertained while you're out building empires," Steve said, smirking. Linda gave a soft chuckle and leaned against the counter. I forced a smile. Didn't know we were having company. Linda's eyes darted to mine, just for a second, then back to Steve. "You're always welcome here. Aren't you, Steve?" He raised his beer. "Damn right." Later that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Linda was already asleep, or pretending to be. Her back was turned like always. Something about the way she laughed at his jokes rubbed me raw. That look she used to give me, I saw it flicker on her face when she glanced at him. And Steve, he was too comfortable, leaning too close, taking up too much space in my home. I turned toward her. "Linda," I whispered. No answer. I tried again a little louder. "Linda?" She shifted but didn't speak. I let out a breath. Do you think we're okay? She was still. After a long pause, she murmured, I don't want to talk about this right now. That was it. That's all she gave me. The next morning, I found Steve's hoodie draped over the kitchen chair. I stared at it for a long time. That week, more things started standing out. Linda stopped asking how my day was. She started going for solo walks after dinner, coming home flushed and breathless. The girls got colder too, subtle things. Less excited when I came home. Inside jokes they didn't explain. Glances they exchanged with their mom. One night, I walked into the living room and found them all watching a movie without me. Steve sat between my daughters, arm along the back of the couch. Linda curled up in the armchair, sipping wine. The remote was in his hand. When they noticed me, no one paused the movie. No one invited me to join. Hey, Dad, Jordan said casually. We started without you. I sat in the corner recliner, stone silent. I didn't recognize my family anymore, and they didn't seem to miss me. That weekend, I tried again. I took Linda out for dinner, just the two of us. I booked the same booth at Monticello's where I proposed 15 years ago. She smiled politely, talked about the kids, about the laundry. Nothing personal, nothing real. I reached across the table and took her hand. She flinched. You used to look at me like you saw something worth holding on to, I said quietly. She pulled her hand back and folded her napkin. We've changed, Jake, but I haven't stopped trying. Her eyes met mine. For a moment, I thought I saw guilt, maybe even pain, but it vanished too quickly. I'm tired, she said. Tired of carrying this alone. You're not alone, I insisted. Her lips curled, almost into a smirk. Are not. That night, when we got home, she headed straight upstairs. I stayed behind. Alone in the kitchen, I stared at the wine glass in the sink, lipstick smudged across the rim. There had been two used, but I hadn't been home the night before. That was when I finally started noticing everything. The locked phone, the whispered calls, the new underwear I hadn't seen her wear for me, the way the girls called Steve uncle, but clung to his every word like he was more than family. And when I asked Linda about it, she got defensive. Don't be paranoid, she snapped. You're being ridiculous. But I wasn't. I just hadn't accepted it yet. Chapter 3. Gaslight and Gut Feelings. It started with a question. A simple one. Who were you texting just now? Linda looked up from the kitchen island, her phone still in her hand. Her fingers paused, hovering over the screen, before her face slowly turned neutral. My sister, she said, but she didn't look me in the eyes when she said it. I nodded slowly. You've been texting her a lot lately. She raised an eyebrow. Are you checking my phone now? No, I'm not checking anything, I said calmly, even though I wanted to. Just noticing. Well, maybe you should stop noticing every little thing and start trusting me. I said nothing. The silence between us stretched like taut wire. Then she scoffed and turned back to her phone, muttering, God, Jake, you've really become paranoid. I wanted to say more, to press, to peel away that tight little lie and force the truth out. But I didn't. I just grabbed my thermos and left for the job site with the same sick feeling twisting in my gut. That evening, I came home to find Steve in the backyard. Again, he was shirtless, sweat glistening across his chest as he pushed the mower across our lawn like he'd lived there his whole life. The girls were on the porch laughing at something, he said. Jordan tossed him a Gatorade like it was a football game. Linda sat on the deck steps, legs crossed, drink in hand. She smiled at him. That smile, the same one she hadn't given me in months. I forced a polite nod. Didn't know we had company. Steve flashed his trademark grin. Yard was looking rough, man. Figured I'd help out. I can mow my own damn lawn, I muttered just loud enough for Linda to hear. She stood up with a little sigh. Why are you always so tense lately? Tense, I replied, eyes flicking between her and Steve. Maybe because every time I come home, he's here. Jake, she said sharply, he's been helping around the house. God forbid someone helps me for once. The girls shifted uncomfortably. Steve took another swig of Gatorade and said nothing. I gave a short, humorless laugh. Helping? He's living here more than me. Linda walked toward me and crossed her arms. You know what? This attitude, this suspicion, it's exhausting. You work late every day, you barely talk to us, and now you're starting fights over someone mowing the lawn. You're missing the point. No, Jake. I think you're missing the point. You're so caught up in your little conspiracy theories that you can't even see how distant you've become. I stared at her, stunned. I've become distant. She didn't answer. Just turned on her heel and walked back toward the porch, where Steve and the girls resumed their happy little scene. Like I didn't even exist. Later that night, I sat in the darkened garage on a folding chair, flipping through a dusty notebook I used to track mileage for my old truck. I tore a page out and started writing. Day 1. Gut check. Something is off. I don't want to believe it, but my instincts are screaming. I know Linda, or at least I thought I did. But now, I paused, the pen hovering above the page. Then I wrote, I don't recognize her anymore. That night, I started journaling everything. The little things, the late night texts, the abrupt mood swings, the way Steve always managed to be around when I wasn't. It helped, not because it made me feel better, but because writing it down made me feel sane. It reminded me that I wasn't imagining things. A few days later, I found Linda in the hallway, talking on the phone. Her voice was low, hushed, playful. I froze by the doorframe, just out of sight. Then I heard it, a soft laugh, followed by, "You know I can't talk like this when he's home." I stepped into the hallway. "Who can't you talk to?" She jumped. "Jesus, Jake," she snapped. "Don't sneak up on me like that." "You were laughing? Who were you talking to?" "My friend Megan." "Does Megan usually make you whisper?" Her jaw clenched. "I told you you're being paranoid. And I told you something's not right," I said, voice low but firm. "I feel it. Feelings aren't facts, Jake." That line stopped me. It was something Steve used to say all the time, back when we were teenagers. I hadn't heard it in years. I narrowed my eyes. Linda sighed heavily and brushed past me. As she walked away, I noticed she was wearing perfume. She never wore perfume anymore. Not for me. That weekend, Steve showed up again, this time with takeout. "Brought Chinese," he said, lifting the paper bag like a trophy. "I didn't invite you." Linda stepped in. "He's just being nice, Jake. Why are you acting like a jealous child?" "I'm acting like a husband who doesn't like his so-called best friend showing up uninvited every other day." Steve chuckled from the kitchen. "Man, if I wanted to steal your life, I'd at least take the new model." Haley and Jordan laughed. Linda smiled, really smiled. I felt my face flush with quiet rage. "Funny," I said. "Real funny." Steve didn't look up. "Lighten up, Jake. You've been real uptight lately." I clenched my fists, but I said nothing. Instead, I turned around and walked to the garage. That night, I added another page to the journal. Day 11. He's everywhere, and she defends him like I'm the outsider. This isn't in my head. I see it. I feel it. One night, I came home early from a supplier run and caught Linda walking toward the front door dressed up. Not like grocery store casual. No, she had makeup on. Heels. That tight blouse she never wore for me anymore. She froze when she saw me. "I thought you'd be back later," she said. "Where are you going?" "Just out with Megan." I stepped closer. "Megan again?" "Yes, Jake. I have friends." I stared at her. "Then let me drive you." Her eyes flared for just a second. A flash of panic. But then she smiled coolly. "That's not necessary." "Then let me say hi when you meet her. We never see your friends anymore." "I'm not going to play this game," she said coldly. "You need to stop smothering me." "Smothering?" I laughed bitterly. "I barely see you." She turned away, walked past me, and left. Just like that. Later, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. Her location was off. Her phone silent. Across the room, her laptop sat open. I stood, hesitated. Then I opened it. The browser was cleared. History wiped. I closed it and sat back down. I wrote again. Day 18. She's not afraid. Not hiding. Because she thinks I'll never really believe it. She makes me the problem. She doesn't even try to lie well anymore. My instincts were no longer whispering. They were screaming. But still, I didn't want to see the truth. I wanted to believe in the woman I married. The one I used to fall asleep beside, every night, thinking I was the luckiest man alive. Chapter 4. The Growing Distance. It was a Tuesday evening when I noticed it again. I stepped through the door, worn out from another 12-hour day at the job site, expecting the usual quiet or maybe the girls fighting over the remote. But instead, laughter filled the house. Loud, genuine, not mine. As I made my way down the hall, I heard Haley's voice, giddy playful. "Uncle Steve, you're cheating." "Me? Never." Steve said, dramatically offended. Just because I win every round doesn't mean I'm cheating. It means I'm awesome. I stepped into the living room. Steve was on the floor with a deck of Uno cards spread out between him and my daughters. Haley leaned into him, giggling. Jordan had her legs draped over the ottoman, phone forgotten in her lap. Linda sat nearby on the couch, barefoot, wine glass in hand, grinning like she was at a dinner party. They all noticed me at the same time. "Hey, Dad," Jordan said, almost as an afterthought. "Jake," Linda said flatly, "you're home early." "I live here," I said with a small laugh that no one returned. Steve didn't even get up. He nodded toward me like I was the damn mailman. "Hey, man, just keeping the girls entertained." "Yeah," I said, eyes flicking between all of them. "Looks like you've got it covered." I didn't belong in that room, and for the first time in my own home, I felt it. Later that night, I sat on the porch alone. The cold beer in my hand didn't help the pressure behind my eyes. It used to, but not anymore. I watched as the lights turned off inside, one by one. The girls went up first. Then Linda disappeared down the hall without a word. No goodnight. No "how was your day?" No kiss. I sipped the beer, felt the knot in my chest pulse again. Over the next few weeks, Linda's wardrobe began to change. She started dressing up, just not for me. On the mornings I was home, she wore baggy sweats and a messy bun. But when I left for work and forgot something or came home early, I'd find her in tight jeans, makeup done, hair straightened, perfume trailing behind her like a whisper. One afternoon, I doubled back after forgetting my phone. When I opened the door, she jumped like she'd been caught stealing. "Oh," she said, "you're back." "Forgot my phone," I said, eyeing her carefully. "Where are you going?" She waved it off. "Just out with Megan." Always Megan. Linda's imaginary shield for anything unexplainable. "Why are you dressed like that?" Her smile was brittle. "Like what? You didn't dress like this the last time you went out with her." "Are you keeping a log now?" she said, instantly on the offensive. "I'm just asking." "Well, maybe you shouldn't," she snapped. "Maybe you should trust your wife instead of interrogating her every time she puts on lipstick." She stormed out without another word. My mother, who had lived with us since her hip surgery last year, became quieter too, more reserved. She used to talk to me about everything: recipes, the girls, politics, the neighbors. Now, she avoided eye contact, changed the subject when I asked about the house, disappeared into her room during dinner. One day I asked her directly, "You notice anything weird lately?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "Linda, the girls, Steve." She looked down at her hands. "They're just close." "Too close," I said. She didn't respond. That was an answer in itself. On a Sunday afternoon, I returned from a weekend job 3 hours early. No one knew I was coming. My boots echoed on the hardwood as I walked inside. The house was empty. At least it seemed that way, until I noticed the faint clink of glass in the dishwasher. I opened it. 2 wine glasses, one with a smudge of lipstick. I hadn't been home all weekend. I stood there for a long moment, staring at them like they were evidence in a courtroom. Because in a way, they were. Linda came through the door 10 minutes later, holding a bag of groceries. She froze when she saw me. "You're back." "Just got in," I said, still staring at the dishwasher. She put the bag down. "What?" I turned to her slowly. "Who was here?" "What do you mean?" "There are 2 wine glasses in the dishwasher." She didn't even blink. "Megan stopped by last night. We had a glass while watching a movie." "Megan again," I said, nodding slowly. "Yes, Jake. Megan. Funny. She never comes around when I'm here." Linda rolled her eyes. "Because when you're here, you're miserable." I felt the heat rise in my chest. Maybe I'm miserable because I know when I'm being lied to. Her jaw tightened. "You know what? I'm done defending myself every time you have a bad dream." "I didn't dream up the lipstick on that glass," I said, motioning to the dishwasher. She stepped closer, voice cold. "Maybe you should try paying attention to your family instead of acting like a detective in your own house." I said nothing, because anything I said would be twisted into proof that I was the problem. She picked up the grocery bag and walked into the kitchen like the conversation never happened. I stood there in the hallway, staring at the empty doorway. That night, I wrote again. Day 37. Even Mom won't look me in the eye anymore. Linda lies without flinching. Steve's always around. And somehow, I'm the one being treated like the outsider. Chapter 5. Revelation and rebellion. It happened on a Sunday afternoon when I least expected it. Haley and I were in the garage. I was replacing a busted headlight on her old Camry, something I'd done a dozen times before for her. She stood next to me, arms crossed, chewing her bottom lip like she always did when she was impatient. "You know, if you show me how to do this, I could stop bugging you every time," she said. I gave a half smile. "Yeah, and put myself out of a job? Not a chance." She laughed. A soft, brief thing. It felt good. Normal. Until she said, "Uncle Steve says you're always controlling about this stuff anyway." I froze. The socket wrench slipped from my hand and clattered onto the floor. "What did you just say?" Haley's eyes widened a little, like she hadn't meant to speak it aloud. "Nothing. I just meant, he said you always want things your way." I stood up slowly, wiping my hands with a rag. "He said that." She hesitated. "Yeah. It was just in passing. It wasn't a big deal." I looked at her, really looked, and saw the shift in her expression. A flicker of realization, a tightening of the jaw. She knew something. Or worse, she believed him. "What else has Steve been saying about me?" "Dad," she said quickly, "don't make this a thing." "What else, Haley?" I asked again, firmer. She bit her lip. "He said you wouldn't understand certain things. That you'd overreact." I felt the words punch through my chest like a fist. "Overreact," I echoed quietly. "Please don't tell Mom I said anything," she added, already turning to leave. I wasn't trying to start drama, but the drama had already started. It had been building for months, and now I couldn't ignore it anymore. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat in the kitchen alone. The old house creaked and groaned in the silence. I opened my laptop, searched online for hidden GPS trackers and keyloggers, and placed an overnight order for both. No more guessing. No more hoping. It was time for facts. 2 days later, I installed the tracker under the rear bumper of Linda's car. A magnetic base, waterproof shell. Perfectly discreet. It fed live updates to an app on my phone. That same night, I installed the keylogger on her laptop when she left it open on the dining room table. A simple flash drive install. 2 minutes. That's all it took. I didn't feel guilty. I felt like a man trying to dig himself out of a grave someone else was shoveling dirt into. The GPS logs started painting the picture first. She wasn't going to Megan's. Not once. Instead, I saw stops at random strip mall parking lots. Hotel lobbies. Once a park across town where no one would think to look. I started taking screenshots. Logging times. Dates. She left the house Saturday morning at 10:15, saying she was meeting her friend for brunch. The GPS showed her parked behind a 3-star motel 20 minutes later. For 3 hours. The keylogger gave me the rest. Messages. Emails. Photos. It was all there. "Steve, last night was insane. I can't stop thinking about the way you looked in that little black thing. Linda, you make me feel alive again." Nude pictures. Hotel reservations made under her name. Steve even sent her a playlist titled Our Escape. I sat there, fingers trembling as I scrolled through months of messages. Jokes about me. Jokes about my blue-collar tantrums. About how clueless I was. "Linda, he still thinks I'm going to yoga on Tuesdays." Faced with rolling eyes, "Steve, let him. He doesn't deserve the truth." I wanted to scream, to punch something. Instead, I sat completely still. My heart was pounding, but my body was frozen. They had done it. Together. Behind my back. In my home. But it got worse. One of the messages was from the night she told me she was sleeping over at Megan's. "Linda, Mom says she'll cover for me if he asks. She's going to say we had wine and fell asleep watching a movie." My throat went dry. My mother. She knew. She was helping her lie. The woman who raised me. The one who used to say, "No woman should ever step out on a good man." The same woman now living in the back room of our house, quiet, always neutral. She hadn't been neutral. She had been complicit. I closed the laptop. My hands were shaking. My chest ached. But the rage was oddly quiet. Cold. Controlled. I looked around the house. The kitchen where we used to cook together. The hallway where the girls would run and giggle on Christmas morning. The living room where I proposed. It had all been poisoned, and the poison had come from inside. Later that night, Linda came home late again. She walked into the kitchen, dropping her purse onto the counter like nothing had happened. I stared at her from the table. You're late, I said. She shrugged. Traffic. I tilted my head. Hotel traffic? Her eyes flicked up. Just for a second. She recovered quickly. What are you talking about? Nothing, I said. Just making conversation. She walked past me without another word. I returned to my notebook. Date 59. It's not in my head. It never was. They're all in on it. Steve, Linda, even my own mother. I've been played like a fool. Betrayed from all sides. I'm not crazy. They made me think I was. Chapter 6. The night of the couch. The driveway lights were still on when I pulled up. That was the first thing I noticed. They were rarely on this late, especially when I told Linda I'd be working out of town for the night. The porch light, too, was glowing like a silent beacon. I killed the engine and sat there for a moment, heart strangely calm. I hadn't planned on coming back that night, but something told me to, a pull I couldn't explain. And the moment I stepped through the front door, I knew why. The living room lights were on. Everyone was there. My mother sat rigid on the love seat, hands clasped tightly in her lap, her expression unreadable. Haley and Jordan were on the couch, side by side, their faces stiff with something between guilt and defiance. Steve leaned casually against the fireplace, one arm draped over the mantel like he belonged there. Linda stood in the center, arms crossed over her chest, not even trying to look surprised, like they had been waiting for me. My boot steps echoed across the hardwood as I stepped in fully, door shutting softly behind me. What is this? I asked, scanning every face. No one answered at first. Then Linda spoke. Cold. Measured. You weren't supposed to be home tonight. I changed my mind, I said. Clearly, that was inconvenient. Still, no one moved. No one greeted me. No hug from my daughters. No explanation from my mother. Not even the usual smug joke from Steve. Just silence. Then Jordan stood. Dad, she said quietly, but not kindly, sit down. I didn't move. My jaw clenched. You want to tell me what the hell is going on? Linda walked over to the coffee table and picked up a manila folder. She didn't hand it to me. She dropped it. It landed at my feet like a dead thing. Petition for separation, she said. We had it notarized yesterday. I stared at the folder, then back up at her. Steve didn't flinch. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. Haley did, but only for a second. You could have talked to me, I said quietly. Linda's head tilted. Talk to you? About what? About how you shut down every time we try to have conversation. About how cold this house has become. This house is cold because you emptied it. I snapped, voice rising. You poisoned this home from the inside out. Linda didn't blink. He gives me what you don't, she said flatly. My stomach turned. Steve smiled faintly, just a twitch at the corner of his mouth. You mean betrayal? I growled. You mean that? No, she said. I mean connection, presence, intimacy, things you stopped offering years ago. You stopped asking. I hissed. Haley stood now, too. Maybe if you were here more, maybe if you actually talked to us like we mattered, we wouldn't have needed anyone else. Needed? I laughed bitterly. You needed my best friend to fill the gap? Jordan stepped forward. Her voice was the sharpest. He's more of a father than you ever were. That one cut deepest. It wasn't a knife. It was a sledgehammer to the chest. I turned to my mother. She was the only one left to speak. I searched her face for something, remorse, shame, even discomfort. But all she said was, they're right, Jake. You've been distant for a long time. I felt like I was looking into a funhouse mirror, everything twisted upside down. My world wasn't breaking. It was already broken, and they were handing me the pieces. So that's it, I said, picking up the folder. You're handing me this like I'm some unwanted tenant in my own life. Linda nodded once. You'll be served officially in a few days, but we thought you deserved a chance to process it privately. How generous, I muttered. I looked at each one of them, one by one. My mother, my daughters, Steve, Linda, all of them complicit, all of them watching me like I was the one tearing the family apart. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. Instead, I turned around and walked out the front door. I didn't go to a hotel. I didn't go to a friend's house. I went to the office, the small one I rented for my contracting business. It was bare bones. Desk, mini fridge, couch I'd bought from Craigslist. I sat on that couch for a long time, just breathing, letting it settle. Then I pulled out my phone. The first thing I did was delete every contact tied to that house. Linda, the girl's my mother. Then I opened the bank app. All the joint accounts were still open. Stupid move on their part. In under 10 minutes, I had drained the checking and savings into an account only I had access to. The retirement fund had early withdrawal penalties, but I didn't care. I left just enough to keep the lights on. Then I took out the burner phone I'd kept for emergency subcontractor calls, activated the prepaid SIM, and texted my attorney. It's time. I need full dissolution prep. Business, assets, custody, all of it. Next, I pulled out my journal, the one I had been writing in since the whispers began. I flipped to the next clean page and wrote, Day 60. They burned me alive and called it mercy. But fire makes steel, and I've never been sharper. Revenge doesn't come in anger. It comes in silence, in planning, in a long game. Then I closed the journal, turned off the lights, and disappeared. Chapter 7. Vanished Man, New Life. Jake Reynolds died in silence. Not literally, but the man who had walked out of that house with the weight of betrayal on his back never returned. The very next day, he was someone else. Under the name Jack Landon, he rented a 2-room cabin on the edge of Pine Valley. Population 4,500 change. Nobody knew him. Nobody asked questions. Just another guy in work boots with a tool belt and a blank stare. He started small, deck repairs, fencing, odd jobs for aging homeowners who couldn't handle ladders anymore. He didn't advertise, didn't post online, just word of mouth. But good work speaks louder than business cards. Within 6 months, he had too many clients to handle alone. He brought on 2 younger guys who reminded him of who he used to be, hungry, honest, willing to sweat. Within a year, Landon Build Company had a fleet truck, a website, and a 6-month job backlog. Jack never bragged. He just worked. His beard grew longer. His shoulders bulked. He wore wraparound sunglasses that kept people from staring too long. The journal followed him, of course. He wrote in it every night like clockwork. Day 101. She doesn't know it yet, but this isn't absence. This is the seed of her reckoning. They didn't hear from him. Not once. Not a single call. Not a letter. Not a response to the divorce proceedings. The house went quiet after he vanished. Linda expected drama. A confrontation. Maybe begging. Or at least a final word. But she got nothing. And the nothing began to eat her alive. Steve was cocky at first. He strutted around in Jake's slippers like he owned the place. Because, in his mind, he did. The girls still called him uncle, but the lines blurred quickly. He tried to be the cool stepdad, the savior. But the mask didn't hold. A year after Jake vanished, Steve got laid off. Some HR scandal about harassment. Linda didn't know the details. He brushed it off as politics and a bitter ex. But the job market didn't forgive easily. And neither did Jake's old clients, who refused to hire the other guy. Money got tight. The savings Jake had left in the joint accounts were long gone. Steve had made a few bad bets. An ATV, a failed crypto phase, that second vacation to Cancun just to unwind. Linda picked up bookkeeping gigs and part-time accounting work, but it wasn't enough. Bills stacked. Late fees crept in. The mortgage choked tighter each month. Worse, the girls had changed. Haley started spending more nights at her friend's place. Jordan became sarcastic, withdrawn. They argued with Steve openly, bitterly. You're not our dad. Jordan snapped one night when he grounded her for staying out late. Then stop living off my food. Steve barked. Linda tried to intervene, but the tension never left the walls. Meanwhile, Jack kept building. By year 3, Landon Build Company had taken over regional contracts in 2 counties. He employed 20 people and had his name, his new name, on trucks that passed every highway from Springdale to Lakemont. He kept a clean profile. No social media. No LinkedIn. His photo never made it into the company bio. Everything was under a management firm and a trust. But he watched from afar. A second phone, paid in cash, gave him quiet access to public court records, school logs, and local gossip forums. Once every few months, he looked them up just to see. On one of those nights, he saw the obituary. Patricia Reynolds, age 76. Loving mother and grandmother. The funeral was scheduled for 2 days later. He didn't attend. He wanted to, badly, but not as Jake. And Jake had died the night his daughters said Steve was more of a father. Instead, he sent a white orchid arrangement with no sender's name and stood at the tree line near the cemetery that morning, hidden behind a pair of dark glasses. He saw them all. Linda, older now, with her hair pulled back too tightly and her clothes looser to hide the stress. Steve, heavier, scowling like a man who had lost his throne. The girls, now women, beautiful, but worn. When the service ended, he slipped away unnoticed. Back to work, back to the silence. That same month, Steve crashed Linda's car while drunk. No one was hurt, but the insurance didn't cover everything. Linda screamed at him for a full hour, neighbors watching from behind drawn curtains. Haley left mid-argument, slamming the door. Jordan stayed long enough to whisper, "You're pathetic," before walking away. Jake read about it online. Small-town forums posted everything. By year 5, Jack owned 3 homes under shell companies. He had properties in escrow, a lake house under renovation, and a small rental cabin he offered to battered husbands for free, no questions asked. A quiet bit of justice he never told anyone about. The journal was now 3 volumes deep, each filled with pages of clarity, strength, resolve. The last page of the 3rd journal read, Day 1812. I didn't disappear. I evolved. They chose betrayal. I chose rebirth. He had dinner with friends now, real ones. He dated occasionally. Nothing serious. Nothing fake. And every now and then, when he caught the sunrise hitting the lake just right, he smiled without bitterness. But he hadn't forgotten, because karma doesn't need reminders. It just needs time. And their time was coming. Chapter 8. The Return of the Ghost. 5 years. It had been 5 years since Jake Reynolds vanished without a trace. Now he walked the streets of his old town like a ghost with flesh. No one recognized him. He was leaner now, trimmed beard, short crop hair, shoulders broader from years of lifting, not to survive, but to build. Every inch of him was chiseled with discipline, every step controlled and silent. He didn't walk like a man burdened anymore. He walked like a man who'd made peace with the storm he was about to become. The first time he returned, it was at dusk. He parked his black Range Rover 2 streets away from the house he used to own. His home. Except now, the paint was peeling. The yard was overgrown. A foreclosure sign sagged on one wooden post. Perfect. He'd waited long enough. A shell company under his management firm made the purchase within 48 hours. All cash. No trace. Jake Reynolds didn't own the house anymore, but Landon Holdings did. He walked through the empty rooms one afternoon after escrow closed. The wallpaper in the upstairs hallway still bore the faint crayon marks from when Haley used to pretend she was an artist. The kitchen smelled faintly of old grease and lemon air freshener, like Linda used to spray after frying bacon. His boot steps echoed as he stood in the center of the living room. This was where they'd blindsided him. Where Linda said Steve gave her what Jake didn't. Where Jordan said Steve was more of a father. Where his mother stared down at her lap and let him walk out without a single protest. Jake stood there now, taller, wealthier, stronger, and utterly untouchable. He smiled to himself, not out of joy, but purpose. A week later, he spotted Steve. Jake was sipping espresso outside a cafe 2 blocks from the old high school when he saw him cross the street in a faded uniform. Tan pants, grease-stained shirt, name badge crooked on his chest. Steve, assistant manager. Tires and lube. He looked tired. His gait was slower, gut rounder, hairline retreating. He yelled at some younger kid behind him to move faster, oblivious to the man watching him from behind polarized lenses. Jake didn't move. He didn't smile. He just watched. Another day, he spotted Linda leaving a community center. She walked with a stack of papers in one arm and a tired limp in her step. The vibrant energy she once carried was gone, replaced by exhaustion and something darker. Resentment. Jake knew she'd taken a part-time teaching assistant job through the school board. Budget cuts meant she hadn't landed a full-time position. She was underpaid and barely respected, but it was a paycheck. He also knew who her supervisor was, and more importantly, who her employer's wife was. His daughters came next. It was Haley who reached out first. Her message arrived through the anonymous email address Jake had set up months ago under the name J. Landon. Subject: Are you him? I don't know why I'm writing this. I don't even know if it's you. But I think it is. I think I saw you. I'm not mad anymore. I just want to understand. Why you left. Why you didn't say goodbye. Jake read it 5 times. Then he shut the laptop. He didn't reply. Not yet. Jordan followed 2 weeks later. Subject. Dad, if this is you, I'm sorry. For what I said, I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't know. I was just a kid trying to protect the only version of the truth I had. But I see it now. All of it. Please say something. Jake didn't. Not yet. Regret was good, but it wasn't redemption. He started leaving crumbs. A signed thank you card from Landon Build Company was mailed anonymously to Linda's school, congratulating the district for employing someone with such creative moral flexibility. No one made the connection, but the whispers began. The school's secretary overheard 2 teachers gossiping in the break room. Jake knew because he paid the secretary to report back. Then came Steve's wife, Melinda. She'd left him years ago, but they never formally divorced. Jake found her on Facebook, still using her maiden name, and working for the same law firm Linda had done taxes for during the lean years. Jake sent her an envelope. No return address. Inside, color printouts of emails, screenshots, timestamps, hotel receipts, photos of Linda and Steve, blurry but unmistakable. One from the day Steve claimed he was out doing estimates for a roofing job. Jake watched from a distance as she stormed into the shop mid-shift 2 days later and slapped Steve across the face in front of 2 junior techs and a customer. The incident made it onto the town's subreddit by sundown. Jake read every comment. Then he poured himself a bourbon. One final envelope. This one addressed directly to the school board chair. Inside were photocopies of Linda's explicit messages to Steve, dated during her tenure at the same school she now taught at. The language was inappropriate. The timing? Damning. No threats. No demands. Just the truth. Jake sealed the envelope, licked it shut, and dropped into the mailbox himself. Chapter 9. The 118 Missed Calls. Jake stood barefoot on the balcony of his high-rise condo, a double bourbon in hand, the wind tugging at the sleeves of his crisp white shirt. Below him, the city buzzed in soft golden tones, cars threading through downtown, lights flickering on like fireflies. It was peaceful up here, untouchable, a world apart from the one he'd walked away from 5 years ago. He checked the time, 5:59 p.m. He took a final sip from the glass, exhaled slowly, and tapped the screen of his phone. 6 o'clock p.m. It began. The video dropped like a meteor, uploaded simultaneously to 6 pre-scheduled YouTube channels, mirrored to 2 private cloud drives, and sent via anonymous email to every major contact tied to Steve, Linda, the school district, and the local news tip lines. Title: The Truth You Were Never Told, 5 Years in Silence. It opened with a slow pan of the Reynolds family photo, Jake, Linda, Haley, Jordan, all smiling at a beach years ago. The caption faded in. Betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a whisper that spreads like poison. Then came the footage. Hidden security camera clips from the house. Steve entering late at night while Jake was working out of town. Linda in a bathrobe greeting him at the door. Next, the emails. Side-by-side screenshots of Linda and Steve mocking Jake, planning rendezvous, coordinating lies. Receipts from hotels. Google location data synced with time-stamped messages. A clip from Jake's phone recording. If he ever finds out, we just say he's being paranoid. He'll believe it. He always does. Linda's voice. Cold. Confident. Then the audio. Jake's daughter, Haley, telling him years ago that Steve was more of a father. The final scene? The living room couch. Jake standing with a manila folder in his hand. Linda, Jordan, Haley, and even his own mother, each complicit, each silent. Then black screen. White text. This was my goodbye. But silence isn't justice. This is. The video was 37 minutes long. It took 17 minutes for it to go viral locally. Jake turned from the balcony and walked inside his condo. The place was sleek, minimalist, floor-to-ceiling windows, polished marble counters, soft jazz humming low from a hidden speaker system. A far cry from the fixer-upper where he'd once begged for scraps of dignity. He poured himself another drink, set the phone on the counter, and waited. It started with Steve. At 6:14 p.m., a clip surfaced on Twitter, recorded on someone's phone, showing Steve being called into the manager's office at Tires and Lube. 3 minutes later, he walked out carrying a cardboard box and a red face. Someone threw a coffee filter at his back and yelled, "How's that for a real man?" Huh? Hashtag Uncle Homewrecker. At 6:27 p.m., Steve's ex-wife, Melinda, reposted the video with the caption, "Told y'all he was a snake. Bet Linda's regretting her decisions now." Linda was at work when the video hit. By the time she saw the first 10 seconds, her phone was already lighting up. Coworkers whispered. The school board group chat exploded. Within the hour, she was escorted from the building, not fired yet, but placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Someone slid the faculty room door closed behind her and whispered, "Slut," loud enough for it to echo. Her face went pale. She tried to call Jake right then and there. Voicemail. She called again and again. Nothing. By 7:42 p.m., Haley and Jordan were sitting on the back patio of Linda's rental house. Both had watched the entire video, separately, silently, before texting each other. Jordan had said it first. "I think we need to talk to Mom." Face to face. Linda opened the sliding door and froze when she saw them both seated. Her face was tear-streaked, mascara smudged. "Girls," she began, trying to smile. "Please, before you say anything," Haley held up her hand. "Don't." Jordan stepped forward. "You lied to us. I didn't want to hurt you." "You used us," Haley snapped. "You and Steve made us choose. And we chose wrong." Linda's face crumpled. "You were just kids. You didn't understand." "No," Jordan said coldly. "But you did. You were an adult. You had a husband who worked himself into the ground for us. And you made us believe he was the problem. You didn't just lie," Haley added. "You manipulated all of us." Linda stepped forward, reaching. "Please, he wasn't perfect. You know that. He was always working, always distant, because he was building a life for you." Jordan interrupted. "For us. So you could play happy family while sneaking around with his best friend." Linda covered her mouth. They walked out. She collapsed to her knees. Her phone buzzed again. Jake's name. Voicemail. By 9:12 p.m., Jake's phone had logged 74 missed calls. By midnight, it was 118. Linda, Steve, Haley, Jordan. A few unknown numbers he could guess were former in-laws or angry sympathizers. Jake sat on a leather sofa in his condo, barefoot, legs up, sipping his bourbon slowly while the jazz looped in the background. The phone vibrated again. "Missed call, Linda, X119. He didn't pick up. He didn't even glance at the message previews. He opened his journal and wrote 3 short lines. Day 1827. They finally saw the truth. Now, they get to live in it. He set the journal down and walked back to the balcony. The city was quiet now. The stars flickered above glass towers. And Jake, he just watched. Chapter 10. Redemption or Revenge. The cafe smelled of fresh coffee and toasted bread, warm and familiar. Yet the moment I stepped inside, everything felt foreign. Haley and Jordan sat in the corner, their backs to the window, faces shadowed, but unmistakably theirs. They looked older, wiser maybe, or just more worn by time and truth. I sat down opposite them, hands folded on the table. Neither spoke first. The clatter of cups and quiet hum of conversations surrounded us, but a heavy silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Finally, Haley broke it. "Dad, I'm glad you came." I nodded slowly. "Me too." Jordan's eyes searched mine. "I don't know if I can forgive you, or even trust you." I studied their faces, the same eyes that once looked up to me, now narrowed with cautious distance. "You made your choices," I said softly, "and I made mine." Haley's lip trembled. "We lost you for so long." "Not lost," I corrected. "I disappeared." Jordan scoffed. "Is it your excuse? To just vanish?" "No," I said firmly. "It was survival." Linda's voice came then, almost a whisper from behind me. "Jake." I turned. She stood at the edge of the cafe, worn and weary, but pleading. "I'm sorry. For everything. Please, give me a second chance." I met her gaze, steady and unflinching. "You broke the vows. Not once, but 1,000 times. There's no second chance for that." She swallowed hard, tears pooling in her eyes. Steve was there too, standing awkwardly near the door, avoiding all our eyes. I never wanted to hurt you, he muttered. I nodded at him once. Thank you for showing me the truth, for setting me free. Linda sobbed quietly as I stood. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope. I slid it across the table to Haley. Inside was a signed deed to a modest house. A fresh start for them. No strings attached. No more secrets, I said. No more lies. Haley looked at me, disbelief flickering in her eyes. I smiled gently. Sometimes, I said, turning toward the door, the only way to win. I paused, taking in the cool evening air, is to disappear until your absence becomes louder than their betrayal. With that, I stepped outside, the sun setting behind me like a silent witness.